Money isn't real. Not in the way a rock is real, or a tree, or a sandwich. It's real because everyone agrees it is, and the moment they stop agreeing, it isn't. This has happened before, more than once, and yet you work for it, stress about it, make decisions every single day because of it. Not because of what it is, because of what it buys. This is the story of the most powerful idea humans ever invented, and why nobody fully understands it. You have grain, I have sheep. Simple, except you don't want my sheep, and I don't need your grain right now, and neither of us can agree on how many chickens a cow is worth, so we just don't trade. For thousands of years, this was the problem nobody could solve. Barter sounds logical. In practice, it's a nightmare. For a trade to happen, both people need to want exactly what the other has, at exactly the same time. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Everyone else calls it impossible. So humans did what they always do when something doesn't work. They invented something new. The first money wasn't coins, it wasn't paper, it wasn't even metal, it was grain. Ancient Mesopotamia, around 3000 BC, farmers deposit grain in temple storehouses. They get a receipt. That receipt can be traded, exchanged, used to pay workers. The grain stays in the warehouse. The receipt moves around. Sound familiar? Then came shells, cattle, cloth, salt, teeth. Yes, teeth. If enough people agreed something had value, it became money. The only rule was that everyone had to believe it, which is still the only rule. The problem with grain and shells and cattle is obvious. Grain rots, shells break, cattle die, and nobody wants to carry a cow to the market. So humans needed something durable, portable, divisible, something that held its value without needing to be fed. Enter metal. Gold and silver don't rot, don't break, don't need water. They just sit there being valuable. For about 2,000 years, that was enough, until someone had a revelation. What if you didn't actually need the metal? Lydia, 600 BC, a small kingdom in what is now Western Turkey. Someone stamps a lump of metal, same weight, same metal, every time. You don't have to weigh it, you don't have to test it, you just trust it. That stamp changed everything. Before the coin, every transaction was a negotiation. How pure is this gold? How heavy is this silver? Is this worth what you say it is? The coin ended that argument. One stamp, one authority, one guarantee. But here's what's interesting about that stamp. It wasn't a scientific symbol. It wasn't a measurement mark. It was a king's face. The coin didn't just standardize value, it announced who was in charge. And kings being kings, they almost immediately figured out how to cheat it. Shave a little gold off the edge, mix in cheaper metals, issue the same coin with less actual value, pocket the difference. The coin looks the same, feels the same, but it isn't. People eventually notice. Prices rise, trust erodes, the economy wobbles. It's the first financial fraud in recorded history. It will not be the last. Coins spread fast. Greece, Persia, Rome. China independently invents its own version around the same time. Different faces, different metals, same idea. Whoever controls the mint controls the economy. And for the first time in history, that power has a shape. It fits in your pocket. China, 7th century AD. The Tang Dynasty. Merchants are carrying enormous amounts of copper coins across the country. Heavy, dangerous, inconvenient. So they leave the coins with a trusted merchant and get a piece of paper instead. A certificate, a promise, a note that says, I have your money, come get it whenever you want. But they never go get it. Because the paper works just as well. The Song Dynasty formalizes this in the 10th century. The world's first government-issued paper money. It's lighter than coins, easier to carry, easier to trade. There's just one problem. The government keeps printing more of it. More paper, same amount of goods. Prices rise, the paper loses value, people lose faith. China invents paper money and almost immediately discovers inflation. Europe hears about this and laughs, then spends the next 500 years slowly figuring out the exact same thing. By the 17th century, European banks were issuing their own paper notes. The idea was simple. You could always exchange your paper for gold. Real gold, kept in a real vault. Somewhere. You should trust us. It started in Florence in the 14th century. A family of wool merchants decides that banking is more interesting. The Medici didn't just lend money, they built a system. They established branches across Europe and created letters of credit that worked across borders. You could deposit money in Florence and withdraw it in London, with no coins crossing the Alps, no bandits, and no risk. Just paper and trust. They also invented something that still runs the world today: credit. The idea was straightforward. You need money for a business deal in another city, so the Medici write you a letter. The letter is worth money. You use it and they collect later. You've just spent money you didn't have yet. The Medici got extraordinarily rich. They funded the Renaissance. Michelangelo, Leonardo, Botticelli, the entire flowering of Western art and culture was bankrolled by a family that figured out how to make money from money. They also became so powerful that 3 of them became pope, which is either a sign of how far banking can take you or a warning, probably both. Europe had a serious problem. Banks kept failing. A merchant would borrow too much, a war would drain the treasury, a harvest would fail, and the bank would collapse, taking everyone's savings with it. So governments created a solution: a special bank, a bank for banks, a lender of last resort so large and so trusted that it could not fail. The Bank of England was founded in 1694, not to serve regular people, but to serve the government. It would issue currency, set interest rates, and decide how much money existed. One institution with enormous power, answerable to almost nobody. Other countries followed: the Federal Reserve in the United States, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan. Today, a small group of people in a small number of rooms decide how much your money is worth. You don't vote for them, you don't know their names, but every mortgage payment, every salary, every price tag in every shop runs through the decisions they make. For most of this period, there was at least one anchor: gold. Paper money was backed by gold sitting in a vault, and you could theoretically exchange your dollars for actual metal. The system had a physical foundation. Then on August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon went on television and ended that. In a single announcement, he severed the link between the dollar and gold entirely. No more exchanging paper for metal. From that moment, the dollar, and by extension most of the world's currencies, was backed by nothing tangible. Just the full faith and credit of the United States government. Just trust. For a while, this system held together. Then came September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers files for bankruptcy. $600 billion gone in a single morning. What follows is the closest the modern world has come to money simply stopping. Here's what happened. For years, American banks had been selling mortgages to people who couldn't afford them, then packaging those mortgages into financial products, then selling those products to other banks, then insuring those products against failure. Layer upon layer upon layer of debt, all built on the assumption that house prices would rise forever. They didn't. When the bottom fell out, nobody knew who owned what. Nobody knew who owed who. Nobody knew which banks were solvent and which were holding bags of worthless paper. Banks stopped trusting each other. Credit freezes. The machine that moves money around the world stopped. For about 72 hours, nobody knew if money still worked. Governments stepped in. Trillions of dollars were created from nothing. Banks were bailed out. The system held. But here's what nobody talks about. The money that saved the system didn't come from anywhere. It was created, typed into existence, by the same central banks that set the interest rates and decide how much money exists. Turns out the vault wasn't full of gold after all. It was full of trust. And trust, it turns out, is both the most fragile and the most powerful thing humans have ever invented. 2008 changes everything because someone is watching. A person, or a group of people, nobody knows exactly, publishes a paper under the name Satoshi Nakamoto. The idea is simple. What if money didn't need a bank? What if it didn't need a government, a central authority, or a room full of people making decisions you didn't vote for? What if money could run itself? Bitcoin, a currency backed by mathematics instead of trust, by code instead of institutions, by a network instead of a nation. No central bank, no bailouts, no one typing numbers into existence. For a lot of people, this sounds like the solution to everything. And in some ways, it is. In other ways, meet the crypto billionaires who manipulate markets, the exchanges that collapse overnight, the currencies that lose 90% of their value in a week, and the promises of decentralization that somehow end up controlled by a very small number of very wealthy people. Crypto promised to remove human control from money. It turns out that removing human control from something humans invented is harder than it sounds. The technology is genuinely revolutionary. The execution is very, very human. So, what is money? Not what it buys, not what it's worth. What is it? It's a receipt for grain that never gets collected. It's a king's face stamped on a piece of metal. It's a piece of paper backed by gold in a vault that may or may not be full. It's a number typed into existence by a committee in a room somewhere. It's a line of code running on a network nobody controls. It's whatever everyone agrees it is, and the moment they stop agreeing, it isn't. Every civilization in history has run on money. None of them fully agreed on what it was. We still don't. The only thing keeping it real is that everyone agrees to pretend it is. You worked for it today, you'll stress about it tomorrow, and somewhere in a room you'll never visit, someone is deciding what it's worth. They always have been.